Today, I have the privilege to sit with Danilo from Special Effects Media. Danilo, thank you for making time to sit with us today and just share a bit about the journey so far. Before we get into that, just give me a brief overview about who's Danilo and Special Effects Media.
Perfect, sure. So my name is Danilo Acquisto. I'm a sort of young kid from Joburg who actually moved to Cape Town to come and study my law and sociology degree. And I'd probably describe myself as a sort of media entrepreneur, but with a social entrepreneur's heart. I currently own and run a digital agency that specializes in video content called Special Effects Media. And I used to have a career in television and in the media space in the traditional worlds and transitioned here. And yeah, I support a number of NGOs in various different capacities, just trying to help make the world a better place.
Sure, Danilo, thank you for that. And looking a bit at Special Effects Media, or SEM, what does your finance function look like?
So it's a good question. I mean, I definitely did not come from a finance background. I came from a legal background and a media background. So when we founded the company, one of our shareholders was very financially oriented. And so, crossing the T's and dotting the I's was very important for him in the spreadsheets. And we used to outsource the function to somebody overseas. Our finance and accounting function has probably transformed like 6 times since we started the company 8 years ago. Yeah. Currently, what we have is a sort of accounting bookkeeping function that is outsourced to a firm, and they look after everything from the basic bookkeeping, some financial reporting, and all the basics of accounting. And then they use a couple of their own partners to do our some of the audits that we need to do for the business. But then we also leverage OCFO and your fractional CFO services as well to just add another layer of strategy for more board level decision making. So currently our finance function is me as the CEO, and I lead the finance function, and we have an outsourced accounting bookkeeping function and an outsourced CFO function.
Thanks, Danilo. So I just want to double click on that specifically now. At what point did you consider, getting a fractional CFO service provider on board, and why outsource CFO specifically?
So, like I said, I wasn't necessarily the finance guy in the business, but I think as our company grew and we needed to start doing some slightly more complicated accounting, and we brought the function from overseas into the sort of country because of regulatory affairs and trying to understand the local market, etc. Every entrepreneur needs to realize that they don't have all the skills that they need, and you need to resource yourself with the right skills. So I'm very good at strategy. I'm really strong in leadership, I'm really good at the sort of sales and networking side of what it takes to kind of build a business. But running an effective accounting function does require a different kind of mind. And for a good season, while we were running really, really well, we were considering bringing in an outsourced CFO just to basically work with me on slightly more financial strategy related items. For me, if you ask me what product lines we should be doing and what the market needs, I can answer all of those. But whether they're profitable or not, or like how to structure the P&L, or all those kind of questions were things that I'd always just felt like were weak suits of my own. As we could start to afford to bring in certain resources, we couldn't afford to bring a CFO in full time, or I just didn't feel it was prudent at the time. I actually met OCFO as a business or as a brand when I was still at university. A lot of my friends who were at university studying their CAs, etc., like this was like the new business to kind of go into. And you guys are like the sort of Uber of accounting and CFO services. The name has just stayed with me since, given the fact that I had a couple of friends who I really respected, who just enjoyed the slightly more freedom of work, etc. And one day I just decided, well, let's put in an inquiry and start having a conversation. I explored a couple of the options from OCFO. I think it was just the strength of the brand in market, more so than, the quality of the service or perhaps the pricing packages that I looked at. I kind of knew the brand and therefore would have trusted it when it came to making a decision of which fractional CFO service to leverage.
No, thank you. It speaks about that journey. You have to choose a partner to really like journey with. Now, speaking of journeys and partnerships, what does an effective partnership look like between service providers like outsourced CFO and businesses like yourself?
It's a good question, because partnerships I mean, in my world, the digital marketing world, we're always talking about partnerships. Brands try and outsource their marketing functions to agencies, and there's always this kind of conversation about like who's in charge and who knows better, and like I'm paying you because you should be smarter than me, but at the same time, we're the brand, we should be the custodians of what we do. And I think it's no different in the sort of accounting functions as well, and in the CFO functions either. So I think good partnerships are firstly founded on trust, I guess. There has to be this innate trust that, you know what you're doing, I know what I'm doing, and that there is a mutual understanding of what we want to build here. Two, I think it's got to do with a clear understanding of like what the expectations are, like knowing exactly what your role is, what it is not, what it can, what it can't do. And both of those elements actually require quite a lot of dialogue and robustness in conversation. So like, I would say that the foundations of a good partnership in these environments have got to do with a foundation of trust, firstly, but then secondly, a conversation around sort of like clarity of roles. If that stuff is not clear, especially because you feel like you're spending quite a lot of money on the function itself. As a business owner, when you're going through tough times, you're starting to always evaluate your resources, and you're always wondering like, is this the right resource for me? Are they doing what I need? And do I know what I expect of them? And is that reasonable or not? I think if everybody can have that mindset, I think partnerships can offer some great value.
I mean, we've been working together now for about three or so years. What has the journey been so far over the past 3 years?
It's been a very interesting journey, actually. If I think about it, we've been through 2 CFOs over the 3 years together. The first CFO we didn't stay with for very long. I don't think that person was around for too long. But when we moved over to our second CFO, we've had such an interesting ride. Firstly, trying to determine sort of like when a business is starting out with this function for the first time, what exactly are the priorities? How do you decide what to prioritize? And so we spent a good year and a bit trying to decide what was important for this person to spend their time on. Then I think our journey sort of moved more into like, okay, what does the business really need from a function like this moving forward? And how do we split those roles? Like, okay, what does the accountant do? What does the bookkeeper do? What do I need to do? What decisions do you need to make? And how do those things sort of function and work? And as our company's gone through its own seasons, we've been through some really profitable periods and some really terribly unprofitable periods, some scary cash flow concerns. The role of the CFO has had to journey through that as well too. And as I have started to evaluate how functions are, like what functions we want and need in the company for our long-term growth, we've had to have some really hard conversations. We've had to have some really happy conversations. We've had some successes. We've had some losses. I think I'm still learning every day. So I would say, how has the journey been? It's been a journey, I'd probably say. Yeah.
Suppose an adventure has all of those, the good, the bad, the ugly, the scary, the exciting, everything together makes the journey. If we can just look at the past year specifically, what has been most valuable to you specifically and to SEM with our journey with Outsourced CFO for the past year?
It's a good question. I think for me personally, and I don't know if this is the same for everybody else or for anybody who is using services like these, but I think for me it's just knowing that kind of brain is there, and it is somebody who has the enough background in our business and understanding of our function, and hopefully quite a broad understanding of other businesses and their functions to be able to unlock, block in certain decision making. So for example, like in a digital agency environment and a marketing agency, we're selling time and people's time creatively. And we never necessarily had the infrastructure to measure like sort of whether that time was valuable, unvaluable, how much time you should sell and not sell. And we're busy looking at the profitability of certain roles now. And we can look at the last 12 months worth of data, but that doesn't tell me who our current clients are and whether the next 6 months will still be profitable in those roles or not. And that data and that amount of number crunching can be quite complicated. And so it's nice to be able to have somebody who can just present the problem to say, you're meant to be good at spreadsheets, you're meant to be understanding how other companies do these things, how would you go determine the sort of framework for determining profitability? So for me, I suppose in the last year, the most valuable thing is, knowing that person has enough history in our company and does have the technical prowess to be able to solve questions that we may have in the business itself. It's not easy. I do find it must be difficult for the CFO as well too, who are only on a limited couple of hours per month to fully dive in and invest themselves in without going over hours. And that's probably been our biggest challenge so far, is trying to find how to maximize the only 8 hours they've got in a month on some very, very important periods. But that's part of what makes relationships important, is like open dialogue and communication through it. So yeah, I think the last year, the most valuable thing has been knowing that there is somebody who understands our business that you can just fob problems onto and be like, help me figure out the best way to solve this so we don't waste time internally on those problems.
Yeah, playing the role of a guide on the journey.
Kind of,
yeah.
But also like even on a regulatory level, I think, I wouldn't be able to look at our annual financial statements and tell you whether there were, the deferred tax and the unrealized currency gains and like whether there should be any adjustments made to the previous financial year. Like that stuff is where my eyes would glaze over. I think having a CFO, deciding what you need from a CFO is probably most critical. But I think having somebody who's so detail-oriented perhaps is helpful for somebody like me who may have missed all of that detail. You don't want to find out 5 years later when you're in the middle of an auditing process that there is lots of complicated journal entries and things that need to be reconciled and you don't even understand what half of it means. So that psychological safety is helpful.
Awesome. Yeah, which brings me actually to my last question. And thank you, Danilo. You've shared how you came to this point, the journey so far. Any other founders sitting here or watching this today that are finding themselves in a similar situation, what would you say to them about, partnering with an outsourced company or looking at outsourcing this type of function and maybe choosing someone like an outsourced CFO to help them? What 1 or 2 nuggets of advice would you give to them?
It's a very good one. There are a couple of things that I've learned over my journey, and maybe it's useful to somebody. I think the first thing is, are you sure you need this thing, and is this the thing that you need? Because a lot of companies or founders, and I mean, I felt like this in the early days, is like I want somebody to come in and save me. Like somebody else was going to come in and just like do all the things that I'm actually responsible for or like trying to figure out. And I don't think that's possible, not in a fractional environment. It is still a service provider who does want to impress and does need to deliver certain services to you. So I think it's really important that you understand whether you need a CFO and how many hours of a CFO you need and what it is that you need that CFO to do. Outsourced CFO have been really wonderful to try and like help guide you on like what those things could be, but at the same time they're just a service provider in the delivery. Like you need to know what you need as a business owner, and I think you cannot abdicate your responsibility to know what you need to somebody else to be like, you figure it out. If you've got all the money to do that, please go ahead, have fun. But yeah, for us we had to be quite prudent about that. That was probably the first lesson I learned. And the second is softer, but it's something that I think is actually critically important. One that I'm still trying to figure out is like finding the right CFO. Not all CFOs are equal, and I don't think that they're like a machine where it doesn't matter which one you buy, they all have the same processing power. It's not that. There are some basic foundational knowledges that they will have, but personality plays a big role in this. And I think understanding what kind of personality you need in your company is actually important. Making sure that they understand your industry, for example, prevents wasted time on trying to understand complicated things about your world and how the accounting functions work in your world. If you're a creative and like whatever, and you need somebody to be detail oriented, it's important that you find a CFO who is not also creative and like, you want to find somebody who can balance you out well. And so I think personality plays a bigger role in choosing a CFO and a service provider like OCFO than I think you expect. Probably the second one. And I think the third is just to maybe do your own research about like what exactly an accounting function looks like, and what do you expect of a function like this. If you don't have that clear for yourself, then a tension can arise quite early on, and it's not fun for the CFO as well too, who just wants to do good work, and you as well, who wants to have a good partner to drive success and growth. Knowing your priorities becomes incredibly valuable. So don't undervalue I think if I could just distill it into one, it's like don't undervalue the power of the personality. Finding the right CFO, don't compromise. Like work hard, be relentless until you find somebody that you actually get along with and that solves the need that you have in your company.
Sure. Danilo, this has been amazing. Thank you for taking the time to sit with us. Thank you for the nuggets you've shared. And I really trust this will help some of the founders out there. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Anytime. Thank you.